Board games, board games. I'm here to talk about board games, board games, board games. I'm talking about board games, board games, board games. And Bez is my name. Board games, board games. Bez is my name. And Bezzy Breakfast Blether is the name of the show. And I'm going to start, and away I go. Hello, everyone. I hope that you're having a reasonable morning. I'm in London, where we are privileged to have a garden, as you can see, and it's awesome. And it's now sunny enough that I'm coming out, and so you'll get to see a little bit of the back. This is a big fence. Maybe tomorrow, if you ask nicely, I'll show you the other side where there's a few more flowers and plants. But tell me how it all sounds. Here I've got a couple of birds singing and like insects buzzing around, and it's so much fun. Someone on Twitter mentions that where they are, if they only saw 3 birds, then they'd be like, oh my God, what's going on? Is there something that's killing all the birds? But here in London, we're not used to seeing so many birds. I think maybe because the birds are scared of humans, but maybe now they're less scared of humans. I don't know. Maybe I'm just spending a tiny bit more time in the garden. But regardless, I am so happy to be here. I'm so happy that it's becoming summer, and I hope that there is something that you are enjoying today as well, wherever you are in the world. We are going to talk about, it's going to be an Ask Me Anything episode, so literally any respectful questions, just ask away, and I will endeavour to answer everything I can. We're going to talk about a brilliant thing, games that I played yesterday, general things that I've done, and then I'll get to answering the questions. So, talking about a brilliant thing, brilliant thing, brilliant thing, it's brilliant. I want to talk about, okay, so this is a bit self-centered. It's just, let's talk about gardens. And parks. Let's talk about parks, actually. The fact that they were designed as this municipal place for people who don't have their own property, who don't have their own land, who aren't able to enjoy a bit of nature. And so for people to come together and enjoy the trees, enjoy the flowers, and that is a wonderful thing. So yes, it's brilliant for parks. And whilst you still, in this day and age, you don't want to get too close to each other, I know that here the UK government says, yeah, go out for your 1 hour of exercise a day. Obviously, that's more of a guideline. No one's going to be, it's exactly 1 hour. And it's not like you can carry that on, or if you are, it's just like, if you're doing way more than this, you're probably spending too much time outside. Certainly don't go outside and start doing barbecues. That's just being a numpty. But what you can do is have a little walk and be aware of everyone else. Don't go crowding around everyone else, but you can still maybe share a bit of the open land. And right now, when there's fewer cars, maybe go down the back streets and enjoy a bit of the land, enjoy the trees. So that is a brilliant thing that hopefully we can all still enjoy and appreciate. Hey, Alan, it's lovely to see you too. And apparently Alan also has a garden, and that is lovely to hear that you are also enjoying your garden and your little patch of nature. And let's now talk about the games that I have played yesterday. So yesterday, in case you don't know, I do this 8 p.m. Well, I start it off at 10 p.m. on a Thursday because of the clapping. And every Thursday, every Tuesday, a little bit after 8 p.m., we start live streaming games and having a bit of a chat. There's a group of us, there's about 6 of us, and let me know if you want to get involved in that. Because it's, there's a limit, but people are welcome. And last night we played 2 games. Firstly, we played a game that I call 3Mel, which is a game for the L deck, which if you've got an L deck, I have written the rules, but the rules were not good enough for people to understand. So I need to draw a couple of pictures to go into the rules. But basically, you're working on up to 3 words at once. You're trying to make them 1, 2, and 3 letters long, and you're trying to collect complete sets. Yesterday, Tom, James, Chris, and Andrew all scored 70 points. Jason was 56, and I scored 74, which was a new record for me. As you, 1 letter words are 1 point, 2 letter words are worth 2 points, 3 letter words are 3 points, but it's a complete set, you get 4 bonus, which makes it 10 points total. So 7 sets, 70 plus 2 letters is 4 points. And I quite enjoyed that game. Obviously, I'm incredibly biased. I made it up. Sally Jones helped me. It's a word game, but the fact that you are making the 1, 2, and 3 letter words and that you have to collect a set of each, to my mind at least, makes it quite different to all the other word games. I mean, please let me know in the comments if you know of anything, but I don't know of any word game that mixes word making with set collection in the sense of, okay, there's word games where you're set collecting the alphabet, where, okay, you've got to use every letter in the alphabet. But I don't think there's any word games where it's like, okay, you've got to make 1 letter, a 2 letter, and a 3 letter, and do that as many times as you can in a Knizia style scoring method. Let's be honest, Knizia is pretty much the godfather when it comes to mathematical games. Knizia, for those who don't know, best epitomized in Ingenious, what we call the Knizia scoring, which is a puzzle game. You put down things and then you score for connecting lines. And at the end, every color has scored some amount, but your final score is your lowest color. And so it's that forcing of balancing, which I think Knizia became famous for, along with their auctions. I mean, Knizia is just amazing. I mean, frankly, on the Mount Rushmore, I would say Knizia is one of the 4 top designers out there. Thank you for the question, Alan. I'll get to it in a minute. Any other questions are very welcome. And first, to finish the games that I had been playing, I also played Say Anything. Say Anything is a game by North Star Games, Dominic Krapachet and Satish Palimarjari, I think they're called. And this is a wonderful game where it's kind of like apples to apples. You have a question, for example, what's the best place to be... what's the best place to wake up? And then everyone writes down an answer. You show your answer to everyone else, and then the judge picks their favorite secretly. Everyone else says, okay, that's the so it's a really cool thing. And thinking community, as long as they are respectful, go ahead and ask questions. That is the golden rule. Just a little bit of respect. So, other than game playing, what have I been up to recently? What have I been up to recently? What have I been up to recently? So yesterday, just to go through, I mean, I've been enjoying Magnum ice creams, maybe a bit more than I should. I'm going to be honest. I had a couple. I mean, I don't think that I'm burning as many calories as I maybe should do. I did do a bit of hula hooping. I did the 36 spins left, right, with the hula hoop spinning left, right. And that was a interesting way to go. And that made me feel like I was doing a bit of a workout. I watched a couple of the small featurettes, on the board game designers. That's a wonderful DVD that I got a while back, and they've got these short featurettes about 20 minutes about the history of board games, about the future of board games, little things like that, about the BGG top 10, where they interview all the people who made the top 10. And that is a wonderful film by Zoom Out Media in collaboration with Board Game Geek. And so I'd heartily recommend that. And I did also get to spend a little bit of time in the garden. Thinking community, who do I prefer, my mum or dad? That's not a question I'm going to answer. I love them both. And yeah. Alan Oughton, can I talk about working with others when designing a game? Have there been games that you just want to design on your own? Is there a perfect number of people to design with? I'm going to ask these in reverse order. So is there a perfect number of people to design with? 2. Yeah, seriously, the more people that you get, the more sorts of friction there can be, the more arguments, and the more difficult it is to have a shared vision. The most important thing with design, you've got the vision, you've got to say, okay, what exactly am I making? For example, what one important thing to do is to have a clear idea of what you're trying to make. Are you trying to make a game that you're trying to talk about discrimination and subjugation of power? Some exciting news possibly about a game that features those elements. Well, if we're making a game like that, if that is our core goal, then we need to be on the same page with it. Are we making a game where it's going to be frivolous and we're laughing about it? Great, but what's our ultimate publishing goal? Are we trying to make something where we're trying to get 100,000 copies published by a designer to sell it to someone and genuinely make money? Because despite what people say, you can make money in board games. So you've got to have a similar goal of not only what kind of game are you making, but also what are you trying to do afterwards. And so for these reasons, it becomes more and more difficult the more of you that there are. And so I would suggest that 2 is the perfect number for the design. Now, that doesn't mean that 2 is the perfect number to work with, because as you go further down the line, well, even when you're designing, you do lots of playtesting. But as soon as you go further down the line, you've got development, you've got the artists. You want to have more people coming on board to give that whole outside worldview. And with Magic the Gathering, for example, you've got a small number of people working on a team, and they might be 5. And I guess there's also the question of what's the scope of the project, how much involvement does everyone else have? And as you get more and more people, I think that there's more of a reason for one person to say, I am the lead and I am going to break ties. Because ultimately, if you have, let's say, 4 people, and then these 4 people all have differing views, and you can't decide what's going to go on, then how do you proceed? You could say, okay, we'll go this way for a bit and then this way for a bit. But then if you go this way for a bit, are these people ever going to feel, hey, I've had a fair truck of it? And so that's why I get back to, with a bigger team, you want to have one person who's like, okay, whenever there's a disagreement, I'm going to be the one breaking ties, and not that I've got much more power, just that I am there. And bigger teams become harder and harder to manage. Have there been games that you just want to design on your own? Yes. So let's get into what I have done on my own. Frankly, of all my published games, I think that all of them have been solo designs. So no, the L deck is obviously not a solo design, but In a Bind, all the Yogi games, Yogi Guru, I did on my own. I mean, it was with an artist. Yeah, Kitty Cataclysm was on my own. And most of the games that I'm working on are with my own, because when you work with someone else, you've got to find that other person, you've got to decide how are you going to work with them. And there have been some amazing collaborations, like Matthew Dunstan with Brett Gilbert. They've done some amazing work there. So shout out to Matthew Dunstan and Brett Gilbert. And hello, morning, Andy Hopwood. And Andy Hopwood's lovely words. And I think that Andy Hopwood has done a bit of work with Greg and oh my goodness, I'm blanking on JP Treen. And Andy's done something, but Andy is, like me, a bit more of a lone shark and works well with themselves. And when you work with yourself, it's kind of like, yeah, I get to do an idea, I get to work on it when I want, and I'm just doing it. But by contrast, when there's something big, when there's something complex, having that outside input to say, oh yeah, I'm going to take care of this aspect while you take care of that aspect. You can look at it from different vantage points. That's such an amazing thing. So I would say that the bigger the project, the more utility that there is in having multiple designers, the more breakdownable, I know that's not a word, but something like Magic the Gathering, where you kind of say, okay, we're all working on different cards. Okay, you come up with a bunch of cards, you come up with a bunch of cards, and kind of separates out responsibilities fairly easily. That's a way that you can have people are working on one thing. Let's say I'm working on a tiny game, like let's say Freemel. This is such a tiny game that there's no point in having more than one designer. I mean, we can chat about it, we can brainstorm about it, but ultimately it takes one person to kind of do stuff. And so ultimately, I think that it's almost the opposite. Have there been games that you just want to design on your own? There are games that I do just design on my own. There have been a couple of games that I'm like, yeah, I would really like to work with that person, or people that, yeah, I'd love to work with that person one day. But for the most part, especially when you're getting inspired, when you're like, this is what I want to make, and especially when it's a simple game, it's like, this is what I want to make. And Andy Hopwood comes up with, yes, both Greg and JP Treen said that Andy Hopwood does not work well with others. And words of wisdom, design is an individual process, making a game is a joint effort, which obviously that's what you call the design. I mean, I think that's what we hobbyists or more normal people call design. The Magic the Gathering people now started to call vision. And I think that's a really important thing, because one person doesn't need to have that vision. And even when it was Seize the Power, the game about discrimination and subjugation of power and negotiation, I went to Tis Creel. I had this idea for years about a game where the rules were kind of divided. So imagine a game where rolling a die and getting to move along that much is that's a rule that is in charge of one person, and if you don't pay them some money, you don't get to move. Or someone else that says, imagine if we are playing Monopoly and it says pass, go, get £200. Well, someone owns that rule. You need to pay them to actually get that £200. How much do you pay them? And then there was a design competition for Fastival. I was like thinking about that game because that was a game that I felt was pushing the boat mechanically, and I was like, how does it work? Oh wow, this could be about discrimination. Like basically people have different access to rules and governments. And then Tis Creel was someone who I know had like some first-hand experience with oppression and had done some amazing artworks, and so I wanted to work with them. But then we carried on working together, and we did so much work together, and I think it takes one person to kind of say, but now it's become both of our babies. It's almost like, I don't want to assign parentage or gender to it because there's no easy way, but it's like I had that initial vision, but then we both designed it together. And finally, just to finish, can you talk about working with others when designing a game? I think I've already done that. But if you've got any more specific questions, feel free to ask. I'm going to jump ahead to Milos Kachkin. So good morning, Bez. I notice your games are usually quite compact, easy to teach, and don't have a lot of dice or pieces to them. Thank you. That's those things, easy to teach. That's something that I really strive for. So thank you very much for acknowledging that. Is this a result of the style of games you enjoy, or is this a goal you place on yourself during a design? Well, I would say little bits of both. And also, it's not just about what I enjoy, it's also about what other people around me enjoy. Would you ever see yourself doing something closer to the traditional big box board game? P.S. I love the Wibble++ system. Thank you so much, Milos. And just to iterate, the Wibble++ system is now called the LDEC, and that's a game system with 2 letters on each card, and there's a whole bunch of games for it. But the key question is, why do I make small games? Why do I make easy to teach games? And would I see myself doing something more traditional? Let me get rid of this because it's taking up a bit too much of the screen. So why do I make small games? I guess with In a Bind, I've already covered this story in the past week, so I'm not going to focus on it too much, and I'm going to try to add something new to the story. So In a Bind, I started off making a card game, knowing that card games are easy to make. I thought to myself, if I want to self-publish, if I want to do everything myself, if I want to have a chance of going to Kickstarter and funding this myself, then I've got to make the cheapest possible thing. Now, what is the cheapest possible thing? Well, I have heard that 54 card games are really cheap to print. Now, since then, I learned that you don't go for 54. Different printers have different numbers. I mean, some have 55 and some have 56. But regardless, I went for 54, which is why there's 2 blank cards in the original in a bind. And I made that game thinking this is a cheap game. I could make it quite easily. I get to have one company making it. And now for the additional information, which I haven't said in the past week. So I went for the UK company, which then I went with them because I thought, okay, this will be so much cheaper. I won't have to deal with import taxes or anything like that. And then I realized, hey, wait a minute. This UK company wasn't actually printing in the UK even. This UK company was printing in Belgium. What's going on here? And so I stayed with them for In a Bind Junior just to make sure that the cards were identical. But I did have many quotes for other companies, and after that I went with Fabrica cards, known as Treffel, and going from Poland, that's been really easy to do right now. But when it comes to, if Brexit does happen, unfortunately, that is going to be a real pain. And that is going to mean potentially that all my prices, worst case scenario, just shoots up by 20%, and that's going to be horrible. But that is the reason why I make card games, because they are easy to make. And the reason why I make easy to play games is because I wanted to make a mass market game. My first game, In a Bind, my whole design goal was I want this to be something that lots of people can enjoy, that it could sell 100,000 copies. And I know that people say, oh, if you do that, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. But by the contrast, there's the saying, oh, if you shoot for the stars, and even if you miss, shoot for the moon, and even if you miss, you might still land amongst the stars. And that's such a wonderful poetic thing. And it's, saying, go for it. Go with your aspirations. I mean, really, I was aiming, I'm trying to sell millions, but my Kickstarter didn't do as well as I'd like, but now it's all worked out because it's landed with Gigamic. And so that is why I make small games. Could I see myself doing a traditional big box board game? It depends what you mean by a traditional big box board game. So Seize the Power is a game which, when it comes out, would probably be around the £35 mark. It has a whole bunch of cards. It's got different areas. You've got a big grid in the table, and you've got a bunch of tokens and stuff, and you've got player objectives. It's a lot more going on. It's a game which takes a good 90 minutes, maybe even a couple of hours. And so with Seize the Power, I would say that I don't know if I could call it a traditional game, because Seize the Power, I just said, it's a game about discrimination, negotiation, subjugation of power. What other game exists that is about those things? So I don't personally want to make another Agricola. Nothing against Agricola. Agricola is amazing. I love Uwe Rosenberg. Well done, Uwe. I don't think you're ever going to be watching this, but props to Uwe Rosenberg. Feast for Odin, amazing stuff. But that already exists. I don't need to make that. By the same token, I don't need to make Energy Empire. I don't need to make Twilight Struggle. I don't need to make Gloomhaven. Gloomhaven already exists. Why would I be making that? Now, it also ties into what is it possible for me to play with my housemates, and what is it easy and possible for me to playtest. The smaller a game is, the easier it is to playtest. Consider this. If you've got a 5-minute game, then even if you take a bit of extra time during a playtesting session, let's say your playtesting sessions are about 90 minutes, you can absolutely have play it 10 times during that slot, whereas a long game, you might play it once. And that's why, genuinely, Itty Cataclysm, I was averaging about 10 playtests during a 90-minute slot, whereas if I'd been working on Seize the Power, it is a lot more time-consuming to test, it's a lot more difficult, and now I'm in the position where I might be able to start saying on Board Game Trading and Chat UK or other mediums, hey, I'm making this game. Are you interested in joining me? And maybe some people will come along. But for the most part, when you're playtesting with your peers, the smaller games are easier to play. When you're playtesting at a convention, the smaller games are easier to play. And so that's why making a smaller game, it is going to be easier. If you've got to playtest it 100 times, if that is your aim, then you will hit that really easily with a small game. Thank you very much, Andy, for watching. It's been lovely having you. You're very kind, and keep up the amazing work yourself. Back to Milos, I think I've sort of answered that. I do want to do a bigger variety of board games. I do want to do some strategic board games, and I do want to do some things that could even be seen more all about the strategy and the interlace of the web of rules. But yeah, I don't want to do a traditional thing in that. I don't want to do something that already exists. Thank you for the question, Milos. John Power, hope you're keeping well. Thank you very much. I am doing actually not bad, and I hope that you're also doing well yourself. What approach would you have to designing a game to teach someone something? I really enjoyed playing Seize the Power. So, what approach would you have to designing a game to teach someone something? Well, I mean, this is a difficult question. I mean, this almost harkens back to the games from the 1800s, doesn't it? Where games were incredibly didactic. I mean, if you look at, there's a podcast, Ludology, with every other show. They sometimes have something with Professor Scott Rogers. Scott Rogers talks about the history of a board game. And Scott Rogers, in the recent thing about the Game of Life, is doing a little bit of a quick talk about how games did used to be didactic. I mean, look at Snakes and Ladders, which was originally, okay, you roll and move, and then it's teaching you when you go up, it's because of a good deed that you performed. When you go down, it's because of a sin that you committed. And let's look at the game of the elephant, or even the game of shipping and trading, where it's basically all of these from the 1800s up to like the 1950 region is basically just roll a die, move along that much, and along the spaces you get told things. It might sometimes tell you to go back or go forward, and the suggestion is actually saying, hey, play this with your child and have a conversation together. Talk about why this thing is bad or why that thing is good. And that is a horrible way to teach people things via games. That is a terrible way. So then how do you do it? I mean, let's look at Chris DeLeon, which is a person who for 100 days or so, they made a game every day. And what they did is like they had little flash games where the point is that games are so good at teaching people because you're actually doing things. Now, if you're doing things, you're getting into patterns of behavior. And if you're doing things, then let's say you start clicking. So one of the games that Chris DeLeon made was Good Thing, Bad Thing. And what you had to do was to click all the things that Chris liked. Now, you had to put yourself in Chris's shoes, and you had to understand the empathy of Chris. This was kind of, can you understand Chris's worldview? So that meant that vegetarianism was good, beef was bad, and religion was a bad thing from Chris's worldview because Chris is very anti-religion. And this was an interesting thought exercise. Like, what if there are games like to play it? And then what if there were games that were showing the world from different vantage points of view? Now, just kind of clicking things to kind of appreciate, oh, wow, that is a bad thing, and getting reactive and getting to understand their worldview so much. I mean, would that be indoctrinating them? Is that a bad thing? Is that kind of some sort of Machiavellian thing where people are unable to think for themselves? There's definitely some bad traits that you can have with games. Let's look at a lot of Flash games or a lot of Facebook games where if you come on each day that you come, okay, we give you a little prize. Okay, that's fair enough. But then you get games where it's okay, if you come after an hour, you get this new crop that's come. And then if you come after an hour and a half, then the crop has wilted and it says, oh, sorry, you wasted all your money. And that is an insidious way that potentially what that then results in is if you're playing this game, then if you're playing it all the time, it can so easily take over your life. This is a sort of Skinner box situation where, yeah, it's just not good. And we've got to think about how are we affecting those people who are maybe not a little bit vulnerable, those people who are likely to get addicted, those people who are likely to get into depression. And so, again, how do we teach people? Because if we do use these elements of Skinner box, um, sorts of saying, hey, come and click whenever you see this thing that I like in my worldview, destroy this thing that I don't like. I mean, is that okay? So what I think is the ideal way is to kind of build empathy. Now, this is something that LARPs do. I've played a LARP wherein I was a translator for a massive empire. It was a galactic empire, and the galactic empire had invaded this small territory, and I was from this small territory translating things and hoping that the galactic empire would kind of take me away because I'd basically betrayed my country folk. Now, this is obviously a not so veiled analogy to a lot of wars in recent times where people have gone over and there have been translators who have then just been abandoned when the big dominant world empires have just pulled out suddenly out of conflict. And so, but I'm not saying that I felt what they felt, but at the end of that LARP, having people turn against me, having people, having people sort of betray me and having people die around me. Like, I played another LARP where I was part of a prison and part of a mental institute. And again, this doesn't equate to me having experienced what it's like in a mental institute. But this was a game by someone who was part of a mental institute, who did a lot of research, who tried to make it feel something. And we all cried during that game. It was really miserable to be part of. But at the end of it, we all felt like we had an inkling of, okay, this is some of the problems that go on. We have an inkling of what's going on. And I think that being impacted by things, as if people are being impacted by things in real life, even though you're stepping into the magic circle, that's the key difference, isn't it? Because you always have the option to just stand up and say, yeah, I'm not going to be here anymore. This is just making me too sad. I'm just going to go away. You always have that option, whereas in life, you can't escape your situation as easily, especially if you're incarcerated. But to teach someone something, if their actions are being encumbered by someone else's actions in the same way as real life, if their actions are being positively impacted by the same things, if their actions are being negatively impacted by the same things, it's to think about what is the key interaction going on here. And I would also say you can't do a simulation, well, you can do a simulation, but simulations need other stuff on top of it to do the teaching. And if you want to teach someone, what do you want to teach? Do you want to teach like the logic of it, or do you want to teach the emotional impact? And if you want to teach the emotional impact, then nail down to the key bit. And so that is the question. Now, thank you for the board gaming questions. I think I'm going to ask Thinking Community says, if you held a world record, what would it likely be for? So this is a fun little question. I don't do anything well enough right now that's for a world record, but so I guess, you know what, actually, they probably don't have this world record because they don't have creative world records, but I do have the record for the longest game name on Board Game Geek, and that was actually read out by Dave Wetherall last night, which was really fun to see. And so thank you, Dave, for that lovely video. Dave, if you Google Desperate Dave and check them out, and maybe Dave, if you're watching right now, can even put something in the comments. But I do have the longest game name on Board Game Geek, which I'm quite proud of. That's 2,000 words-ish. And I'm actually going to produce that game, and I'm really excited to make this. It's just going to take me to do 550 drawings, which I've not done quite yet. So that is a world record, which if that world record actually existed, then I would be known for it. But having said that, I know that a friend of mine got in touch with the Guinness Book of World Records to ask, hey, we're doing consecutive comic drawing. Are you doing could this be a record? And they said, sorry, we don't do records for artistic endeavors because it's really difficult to say what's a painting. If someone splashes paint on a canvas, is that a painting? If someone does that 24 times, have they done 24 paintings? What is a comic? We don't want to make these sorts of decisions. We want to have things that we can easily measure. And it might be by the same token, they don't want to decide what is a published game. But maybe a published game is fairly easy to say, like, especially once I mean, I would like to get in touch with them and say, how many do I need to print just to make this a published game? How many do I need to print to get it into the Guinness Book of World Records, and make sure that I run the Kickstarter when I have basically that many fans? And I don't know whether it would be 1,000 or 2,000 or whatever. But anyway, that is a world record. And as for the things that they currently say, yeah, hula hooping, that everything, that even the hula hooping, how many hula hoops have you done? I actually met the person who had the world record for most hula hoops. They had a video of themselves. Basically, the person with the most hula hoops had hula hoops from like basically their knees up to like here. It was an insane amount. They could wrap their body in hula hoops simultaneously. And yeah, that was some world record. And if I were invisible for a day, what would I do? Right now, probably not. I mean, I feel like this is a kind of question where I'd have to be, oh my God, what's going on? I'd probably be like, oh my God, what's going on? I can't see myself. I'm really freaking out. Oh my God, what's going on? Okay, well, is this my new state of being? Like, I don't know that I'm going to be invisible for only a day. I'm freaking out. And then I'm thinking, okay, calm down, Bez. Calm down. You can do this. Maybe like tell your housemates what's going on. Maybe phone your dad. Maybe kind of say, oh my God, like you won't believe me, but honestly, I am invisible. And I'd kind of show them proof that I am invisible. I double check to see if I am actually invisible. And yeah, probably after this, I'd be looking around and like, okay, I'm invisible. I probably wouldn't be going into any spy missions or any kind of illicit rendezvous or anything like that. Well, I don't want to have an illicit rendezvous or do anything like that right now anyway, because of the whole pandemic, but also I wouldn't know. So honestly, I would be freaking out and I would be trying to know what's going on, but I would also probably be trying to take photographic proof. I tried to get my housemates to show proof to say, hey, is this going to wear off in an hour? Is it going to wear off in 5 minutes? What on earth is going on? So yeah, honestly, that's what I would be doing. And thanks for the questions. And I have a couple of questions from people before. Claire Payne on Facebook asked, how many times have you been beaten at your own games? Now, Claire asks this because I'm very good at Wibble. I'm also quite good at Yogi. So when you play me, I actually try to win. I'm going to be honest, like with Wibble, I basically sometimes if I don't have much to distract myself, I might be only shouting the second words that I think of. If I'm in a convention, I'll be kind of putting half an eye out to see, okay, what's going on, and hey, let's check out everyone else so I can say hello to them, but I'll still be beating you because I'm just that good at Wibble. And the truth is, at everyone at a convention, I think there's only one person who came close to beating me, which was Owen Duffy. That I'm sure there's at least a couple of people that have beaten me, but I am good at them. But then Mina, my housemates, has beaten me a few times, and recently when I've started playing my games, yeah, I won that one. But the more that I played, the more other people beat me. I got beaten by other people here. I got beaten by people here, especially with the flip and spell type games where it's flip a card and make some words. Other people seem to be beating me quite a bit. So more than I can count is the answer to that question. Thank you, Claire. Okay, so hello, Michelle. It's lovely to see you, and it's, yeah, genuinely, and Michelle is someone who's been following along with a couple of the live streams at 8 p.m. and one on the cards. So, although I didn't do it last night, I'm going to make it a regular event, probably going forwards. Every Thursday, 8 p.m. ish, we have a little competition. And yes, it is lovely being out in the open air. So thank you for sharing that joy. Now, let's get rid of Claire's question. And I think that's... So we've got a final question from Ellie Blues, and after this, that's the end of it. So Ellie Blues asks me, what makes me proud about my games? I mean, goodness, this is just like an excuse to blow my own trumpet, isn't it? I mean, oh, goodness. So the only problem with doing this outside is that I don't have my games to hand to show. Oh yeah, this is like a little visual aid. But in a bind / yogi, I mean, that there is also the question, like, what is a game? Is in a bind and yogi, are they the same game, or do they count as two separate things? In a bind, I am proud of the fact that I did it at all, frankly. I'm proud of the fact that it funded. I'm proud of the fact that I got all the art done and it was basically all me, and I managed to do that. I'm intensely proud of it. With the junior version, I'm proud of the fact that my nieces were able to play it back when they were 4-year-olds old. In a bind junior, I'm proud of the fact that even some adults prefer it, that it retains the joy of the game. That's in a bind junior. In a bind expansions, I'm proud of the fact that some people really enjoyed the artwork, even though I basically blitzed through all of it in 2 days' time, because I was like, oh my god, I'm really late with In a Bind and the expansions. I need to get this done as soon as I can. And I changed my art style completely. I made it more expressive. I just used one pencil to do the layout, one brush, and ink. And literally, that's how I did it. And that was so much fun, kind of doing it in a quicker style. What was next? Wibble. I'm going to go for the actual games. Like Wibble ++ / the L deck, I'm proud of the community that I've started. With the L deck as a whole, I'm really proud of the variety of games for it. I'm proud of the fact that Categorical is so dissimilar to Alphabetical, and the fact that those were both made by two different people. That Categorical, it was invented by Tom Cauldron. Alphabetical was invented by Andrew Dennison, and yes, I developed both of them, but they're both so different. And the fact that, you've got Giftable from David Brain and some other stuff by some other people. I mean, those are the highlights, definitely, for me, but you've got people like Paul Mansfield or other people contributing games for it, and it's wonderful to see like people are getting involved. And I hope to be able to become more of a almost curator / mentor and say, yeah, if you are watching this, if you have a copy of the L deck, or if you know of the L deck, and if you're interested in making games for it, and if you want a little bit of a mentor, then please let me know. And I would love, especially during this time when I have energy to talk, but I don't have so much energy to actually write down stuff, I would love to be a mentor to you to help you make a game for the L deck. And if it's good enough, then I would do what I did with Tom Cauldron, where it's like, hey, here's a great game, 10% royalty, and we'll work out what's fair. And basically, with the L deck, it's like, I'm looking at the big picture. I'm looking like 10 years down the line. And so that's why I want to be generous with my payments and royalties, as generous as I can be. I'm not selling a massive amount. So that's why, 10% royalty for the designer of a deck that this is focused around. 10% for the artist of a deck that's being sold. But then it gets a little bit more complicated when it goes into a book. But I will work out something that's fair to everyone involved, hopefully. I'm proud of that community. I am proud of the fact that the games are so dissimilar. Wibble, the word game, the fast words game, I'm proud of the catch-up mechanism. I feel like that catch-up mechanism saying, okay, you've got all these obligations to use. You have to use a letter from one of these two cards. One of these two letters from this one card. and a letter from one of these two letters from this one card. Whereas I, because I've already scored 2 points, I've got 2 cards in front of me. That's I also have to use a letter from each of these 2 cards. Now that is a catch-up mechanism by dividing the restrictions, by dividing the obligations, by dividing the rules that make the game difficult for you, and putting some of those divisions kind of in front of individuals. So each time you score a point, like I've not seen that in other games in such a neat and clean way, and I'm really proud of that. Grapple, I'm proud of the end mechanism where everyone who slaps down their cards gets 10 points. The last person to slap gets as many points as there are cards left on the table. Now, that had so much work to do during the design stage. I knew I wanted people grabbing cards quickly, but how does it end? If we just let it kind of simmer out, and when there's no more cards on the table, that's the end of the game, that's really rubbish, because it's kind of like a denouement. It's like a bit... It goes, hey, it's exciting, like kind of flitters away. But what I wanted to do was to make it escalate and then cut it off there. So it's like, okay, what if everyone slaps, but the last person who slaps gets nothing? And then that meant that people who understood the game were like, well, I'm just going to slap straight away. And then, well, it's in my advantage to slap straight away because the last person who slaps gets nothing. And then there was the question of, and I had to ponder this for ages, well, I want people to slap, to have that incentive to slap at a certain point, but I want people to slap sort of after they've collected some cards, but before the end of the game. I want there to be that tension. Oh, I need to slap, oh, yeah. And so I was like, okay, well, what if the last person gets as many cards as there are left on the table? And this was while I was cycling. I had this brainwave. I'd been really thinking about it deeply. I'd been really pondering it, analysing it from all angles, listening to podcasts at the same time, and then just sometimes like podcasts spark off different neurons, and so I can't work in a silent room. I like to have little bits of impetus, stimulation on the side. And so then it was like, oh well, what if when you slap you get 10 points, but the last person gets as many points as there are cards left on the table? What that means, if there are 9 cards, then it's to your advantage to slap because you're banking 10 points as opposed to 9. If it goes to... Sometimes you get people slapping when there's like 12 cards left because they're so anxious about slapping early. And then the last person says, oh my God, there were 12 cards left on the table. I actually got more points than any of you. Sometimes it's like, oh, there's 3 points because people are ending up playing chicken because they get into the habit of picking up cards and they might even forget all about the slapping. And then because they get distracted by the picking up cards, and then they're like, oh my God, I came last and there's only 2 or 3 cards on the table, oh my God. And that makes a big difference. That's enough to take you from first place into last place potentially. And that means that the game has the tension rising at the end and it finishes on a high note, and I'm massively proud of that. What other games are there for the L deck? Phrasal. So I'm proud of this. I'm proud of the fact that Matt Leacock, designer of the Pandemic and Pandemic Legacy and Forbidden Island, I'm proud that Matt Leacock played it and said, yeah, that was a nice game. I'm proud of the fact that lots of families play it together, and I'm proud of the fact that lots of people play it together. I'm proud of the emotions that it facilitates. Alphabetical, I'm proud of the my own willingness to take it from a speed game into okay, we'll just take our turns and play it round the table. I'm proud of my willingness to try different things with that game. So I didn't come up with anything amazing in Alphabetical. Honestly, Alphabetical was invented by Andrew Dennison, and then the only change that I made was saying, okay, we finish at a certain number of cards rather than going through the whole deck. Then it emerged that the whole game was completely broken when I played it with a group of drunken folk who just shouted take for every card. And then I realized, oh my God, they're locked in the Nash equilibrium. They are never going to change their play strategy, and this is going to be a stalemate. And so I had to change the entire game so that you're not just shouting take to take a card and scoring 1 or 0 points because everyone's got a thing. And I could have gone to slapping in the middle, but instead I was like, well, what if it were a turn-based game and then we tried a turn-based game and we tried other things. We tried like a game of take where you say take so many times, but then the speed thing just wasn't working. The turn-based thing worked, and then at the end, like once it was already published, Mick Wood suggested a rule change to say, hey, what if instead of playing until one person gets X cards, what if there's Y cards that are out of the game? Because at some point people discard cards when no one picks it up. And so saying, okay, there's 4 cards out of the game. That means that there's a little bit more interaction in each round. And so that game is very much myself. I think it's the Borowiecki is what they're called. Borowiecka and Borowiecki. Apparently plural in Polish is Borowiecki, because surnames are really weird in Polish. If you are so it's Marta Borowiecka and Konrad Borowiecki, but they have the same surname, which is if you talk about them together, they're the Borowiecki. Anyway, so it's basically Andrew Dennison, the Borowiecki, and Mick Wood, who basically came up with all the good rules of that game. But I think that what I'm proud of is my ability to notice that and say this is a good idea. What was the other game in the original deck? Oh, we've got Fable. Fable, I'm proud of. What am I proud of in Fable? I guess, Fable's a game, for those who don't know, you've got the cards, they inspire words, kind of story element. So AP might be Angry Penguin, and then SG becomes Steamy Gorilla, and you've got to make up a story using 3 or 4 story elements, and then you go through it. And again, I think that I'm proud of my willingness to change it even after publication, because I think that the new rules, which unfortunately came out after the deluxe deck, but the new rules which I've got up on the website, I do believe are better. And that's all down to Kate McMillan, who misinterpreted them and then made some suggestions almost accidentally. And so I think that I'm proud of my ability to kind of listen to other people and my listening ability. Couple, I'm proud of the fact that Couple is a 2-player cooperative word game. Each player has a pile of cards, and that's your score pile. So everyone's scoring for themselves, but your score piles have to be identical. So what that means is if you've scored 10 and I've scored 11, we both lose. If we both score 9, then we both win. But even better would be if we both score 10 or if we both score 11. So you're trying to get the highest score. So there's that element of push your luck and get really big scores, but make them perfectly balanced. And that leads to so much of an interesting dynamic. And I'm really proud of that. Actually, I should probably do that for a game for more than 2 people. Just have multiple score piles that you need to balance. Yeah, why not? And that's Couple. The 7th core game was Mickle, which I'm proud of the fact that it's true multiplayer solitaire that you're working on. Am I proud of the fact that it's true multiplayer solitaire? No, that's just a description. I'm not particularly proud of that. It's just a thing that it happens to be. So Mickle or Muckle are many, because many a Mickle makes a Muckle. So if you play Mickle with many a person, then it becomes a Muckle. So I am proud of, the fact that I set out to make a multiplayer solitaire game. I set out to say, I want a game where everyone's got their own deck, everyone's making similar decisions, but we're going through all the cards, and how do we make this work? And the fact that you just choose 1 out of 3, so your options are free. Each time you choose a card, you basically say, okay, I guess you could discard a card at any time, but do you put this card on this line, growing this word? Do you put the card on this line, growing this word? Or do you put the cards on this line, growing this word? And when do you kind of bank the word? When do you discard a word, trying to get the word to be longer? And I'm proud of the fact that it's overall a fun game, that people have, people bought multiple decks of the L deck just to play Muckle. And I'm really proud of that, because that was the point where I played it in 2018, yeah, 2018 at Tabletop Tuesdays, which is obviously not happening anymore. But I played it on Bezzy, 1st of August-ish. And I was playing it, and then people said, "Oh, I enjoyed Wibble, I enjoyed Grabble, but this is the one that I really enjoyed." And if I'm being honest, I was still feeling a bit uncertain in myself. I was feeling, "Oh, are there games?" Because someone had written a review where they'd only played 2 of the games, and they still had the audacity to say, "Well, buy this deck for Wibble. Don't expect much of the other games." I still get slightly annoyed by that, because how do you know how good the other games are if you've not played them? Anyway, to have people buying the deck saying, "I'm probably not going to play Wibble or Grabble, but I really want to play Muckle again, and so I want to buy 5 decks, and okay, 50 quid, okay, I'm buying them." And that was really gratifying, that this game is good enough for people to buy it for. And I think that's a nice thing about the L deck, that I can make games for it, and it doesn't mean that I have to spend thousands of pounds making a whole new deck of cards to say, "Hey, is this game good enough for people to buy the deck for?" I can make the game and then show it to people, and then if it's good enough, people will buy the deck that I've already made. Oh, there's just a little pigeon that moved by. So I'm proud of the fact that it was just generally enjoyed. And finally, the categorical game for the deck, which was by Tom Cauldron. What am I proud of there? I mean, I'm proud of the fact that I motivated Tom to join in, that I kind of feel like a mentor of some sort. I feel proud the fact that I took this raw, brilliant, but unrefined idea and made it into a finished thing with hours of work. And the fact that, yeah, the fact that I came up with 19 different categories. I'm proud of that, I guess. And then for Kitty Cataclysm, I'm proud of the fact that it's always quick and it's always varied. Ultimately, with all my games that have been published so far, I am proud of the experiences that they facilitate. I am proud of the fact that people continue to enjoy my games. I'm proud that I go to Cannes and then I see people playing my games, and I met someone who's being my mentor because I'm making a role-playing game. I'm actually writing something solo for the first time, because I did one for King's College London, but that was a co-creation with Sarah Jury, who invited me to go along with them, and that was lovely to be part of that process and make a LARP all about gender, and that was like a really serious academic thing. But now I'm making something that's a bit more of a comedy. It's called D&D Therapy, and my vision is basically for a dark comedy where people are depressed or insomniacs or whatever, and so the whole world of Dungeons and Dragons is not quite as you think. Like, the monsters are not the bad guys, and actually that mayor who told you to go and kill the dragon, they're just a pathological liar when they were talking about the mayor terrorizing the city. And so it gets back into the what we were talking about of when there's more than one person working on a game or whatever, you need to have that singular vision. And I had that singular vision, and I don't think they're going. Shout out to Lolvi, who's kind of speaking to me once every couple of weeks, just talking about this LARP. And the Smoke in London sets up a system of what they call sparring partners, which they did last year. And last year it didn't quite work out for me. I never got it off the ground. This year, maybe because of a combination of isolation and yeah, we've been sparring together, which basically means Lolvi is kind of like my mentor, but also potentially proofreading and helping me out with stuff. And yeah, each year that's a thing that the Smoke is doing. So if you're interested in doing that for next year, then follow the Smoke on Facebook or whatever. Now, what makes me... This ties into being proud about my games, because while I was meeting Lolvi said, "Oh, you're the person who made Yogi. I've got to tell you, I teach games, I show them to children, and there's so many troubled kids that have such a good time with this game." And for me, that is something that makes me proud. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's gratifying that I get money. It's gratifying that Gigamic sends me money twice a year, and sometimes they even pay for a hotel. Like, they paid for my hotel when I went to go to Cannes, which was really, really nice. And that's nice, that's a good time. But what makes me proud isn't the fact that, I mean, yeah, I am proud of the fact that I am able to pay my rent. I am able to buy food. I'm not able to go out clubbing or anything like, but yeah, I want to say thank you so much to everyone who's kind of just joined in. Michelle mentioned V-Day silence. If that's something that you do follow, then I hope that you have a wonderful time. And thank you so much for following me. And I think I've blethered more than enough. If you've got any questions at all, do ask them, and I will get to them another day. Tomorrow I'm going to be back about brainstorming. I'm going to say for now, yeah, bye bye, bye bye. This is the end of. Actually, let's have. Maybe it's worth having a moments of silence. Yeah, I mean, it's a terrible thing that people have to go through that kind of situation, and ideally, I mean, you can criticize. I mean, I think that it's you've got to respect people who. I mean, sometimes the notion of a hero is a difficult thing because even in today's age, I mean, obviously it's very different. People who died during a war compared to a hero who's serving in the NHS today or someone who's doing supermarket stuff. To some extent, I mean, people weren't wanting to do something amazing. People were, yeah, just thrust into a shitty situation. And yeah, people were put into a bad situation. And I guess we've got to respect the fact that, yeah, they did what they had to. And because not everyone does do, it's not even what you have to, it's kind of, yeah, trying to make the best of a bad situation. And so, yeah, hopefully, I mean, whatever your things, I think you can respect everyone. And I just want to wrap up at this point. And let me, yeah. And Alan Outson says, Alan Watt's thoughts on silence comes to mind. I am not familiar with Alan. And so, yeah, I think that if you've got to anything specific from Alan Watts, or if you've got a link to share, feel free to share it. Thank you everyone for watching along, and I think thank you to everyone who's done something to better those around them, whether it's people who are out on the front line of the NHS or people who are fighting in the trenches in Normandy, or people who are, yeah, trying to overthrow an oppressive regime, whether it's trying to overthrow a government for so that future generations can be bettered, and where they're actually thinking about those around them, whether it's those who are trying to overthrow the regime of the Nazis in the Second World War or whatever. And to all those who are trying to make the world a better place, to all the scientists who kind of work on the vaccine, to all the people who frankly take out the rubbish. I mean, who deal with the waste. To all the people who, it's everyone who is basically thinking about the community, who's thinking about the world around them, and to everyone who's just maybe being kind, even if you can be kind to a couple of people around you today. I think this is maybe something to take on board. I mean, I guess that's what I've been absorbing from this minutes of silence today. That I mean, that song "We Can Be Heroes Just for One Day," but it's not about being heroes. It's not about being recognized. It's not about stepping up. It's just trying to make the world a better place, whether it's for one person or whether it's for a multitude of people, or and so thank you everyone out there in the world who's putting the needs of others above their own and who's genuinely caring. And yeah, thank you to those also who said nice things, because that is what makes me happy and makes me continue to do these things. And I hope that this has been of some value to you. And for now, I'm going to sing bye, 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 bye. This is the goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. We can all be strong. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go.